my super degreaser. Today it's not overly hot. And another key point about when you're cleaning an engine bay, for me, I like to make sure that the engine's either cool to the touch or slightly warm. I don't like working on an engine that was just driven for an hour or two and it's steaming hot. One of the reasons why I don't like doing it is because the cleaner is going to dry too fast. I want an engine that's either cool or warm to the, slightly warm to the touch, so that the cleaner has the ability to break down that grease and grime and not dry or evaporate too quickly. So it's going to look like this. And because it's not overly hot today and I'm not working in direct sunlight, I'm not necessarily worried about the degreaser drying up on me, so I can actually spray this whole engine compartment down all in one shot. Now, another point I want to bring up when it comes to cleaning engine compartments or engine bays, as a professional, I don't know if the customer's changing their oil or they're having a grease and go company changing their oil for them. But what I want to check for before I spray any type of free-flowing water in this engine bay, the engine cap, the port here that allows you to be able to pour engine into the, or pour oil into the engine, I want to make sure it's locked, tight, and secure. So when I'm rinsing this engine down, I don't want water to get in the engine. The other thing is the dipstick, the indicator. I want to make sure that's completely down, locked, and secure so water can't get in there. Also, the brake reservoir. Anything where you're pouring any vital fluids into the engine, make sure all these ports are tight and secure so water can't get in them. Now, as far as the battery is concerned, some people have concerns. Can I spray water or a degreaser on a battery? That's fine. There's really no issues there. If you wanted to disconnect the battery, if that makes you feel better, that's fine. You can disconnect the battery. I just find it's not necessary. Disconnecting the battery, you lose all your memory for your stereo systems or any of your presets for your seats. If you happen to have a fancy car that remembers you and adjust automatically, you'll lose all those settings, so you just have to reset it. But as far as the battery itself getting wet or having a degreaser sprayed on it, again, you have to apply some common sense. Is the battery completely sealed? Does it have ports where you can pour any type of battery acid into it? Make sure they're locked and they're secured so none of the cleaner can get inside of it. But all the years I've been cleaning engine compartments, I have never had an issue with a battery or any type of free-flowing water inside the engine compartment as far as causing any damage to the engine. I did have a situation where the customer had a bad map flow sensor that was cracked, and I didn't notice it at first, and water got inside of it and it actually made it fail, or it set a code on the computer and it said check engine. Here's the deal. That would have eventually done that anyway if there was any type of fluid that would have gotten on it. I was kind of happy that we found it and we were able to address the issue. It was a very easy fix. Just change the code or reset the code on the computer, and the map flow sensor had to be replaced anyway. It was really insignificant. It wasn't an issue. We found it. We happened to find it indirectly by cleaning the engine, so we were kind of happy with that. But now that I've cleaned or sprayed the degreaser all over the engine, I'm going to take my flag tip brush and I'm slightly going to agitate the surface of the engine. Now, this flag tip brush, because it's soft, it's gentle, it's not going to hurt any of the plastics. And you want to use some common sense here too. I'm not applying a lot of pressure I'm not going in here level 10 and trying to break anything. I just want to engage the cleaner into the plastics and clean the engine. Now, there's some areas on the engine bay that are a little bit difficult to be able to get that brush in there. So I want to incorporate another tool that I use. This happens to be made by Easy Detail. It's made for wheels, but I can actually get in some of these tight areas and agitate the cleaner and clean some of these areas of the engine bay. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to get a little bit wet with my cleaner. Maybe spray a little bit more degreaser around these areas that I'm going to get this little brush inside. Then I'm simply going to go in here lightly and just agitate some of those areas I couldn't get with the bigger brush. And again, common sense has to be applied. I'm not poking this brush where it doesn't belong. If it gets a little tight in certain areas, I don't force the brush. I look and evaluate what's in the way, what am I hitting, and then I change course and readjust and do it safely and effectively. I know for some of you it might be a little bit boring to watch this whole process, but there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to kind of cover in a video like this, so I thought it would just be a little easier to leave the camera running and actually show you the whole process as I do it. And this brush is great. It's so tiny, it's gentle, it's also flexible. It will bend for me to get around some of these nooks and crannies. It also has a plastic sheath all the way through the actual bristles of the brush. It's not going to scratch any of the plastic or any of the engine components, so it's really great for this. Even though it was dedicated for wheel cleaning, it's just one of those tools that I find myself using in all areas of detailing. It's a great tool to have. It works well. Gives me the results I'm looking for. I want to get into all these nooks and crannies if I can, so it looks absolutely spotless and then clean. And then I'm going to rinse it off, and then I'm going to use a dryer to actually dry this whole engine compartment. And drying to me is pretty important. I don't want to leave any excess water in here. I don't want any water pulled up in any areas that can create moisture or anything like that. So drying the engine after doing this is a really critical step for me. And I'll show you a little tool that I use. I've used it in other videos before, and it's incredibly effective, and it works really well to kind of dry the engine. And if you don't have this particular tool, there's some other things that you can use. You can use a leaf blower. A leaf blower is incredibly effective at cleaning the engine bay if you want as well. I just find a leaf blower is a little bit too big, cumbersome to work in here, so I use a little bit of a smaller blower, kind of designed to dry some of these areas inside the engine compartment. Okay, now that I've completely agitated the engine compartment with that little brush and got into some of those nooks and crannies, I'm just going to rinse it off with low pressure, low volume of water, and rinse this degreaser off. Again, this degreaser completely rinses freely and cleanly, so that's important to me. Now, as a professional, if you might have noticed, whenever you're cleaning an engine or degreasing an engine and using free-flowing water, you're going to get some overspray. You're going to get some stuff that splashes on the sides of the fenders and up on the windshield. So I constantly want to monitor that and just get that cleaner off, or any of the grease and junk that may have flown out of the engine compartment. I want to make sure I get it off the fender wells, I get it off the windshield and the front of the vehicle. Now, a key point to make about the degreaser that I use, the Meguiar's Super Degreaser, is this stuff is not caustic. It's not going to hurt the paint. You don't necessarily want it to dry on the paint. So what you just want to do is kind of keep an eye on it, make sure that if any of this degreaser, or the degreaser you choose to use, if it flows over onto the side of the fender wells, address it immediately, rinse it off, make sure it doesn't dry on there, and you should be fine. Now, the next part is drying this engine off. And I've highlighted this tool before. It's a tool made by X-Power, and I've got a little bit of water on it, but that's fine. It's completely made out of plastic. It's not going to hurt anything. This little tool, every time I use it, I just fall more and more in love with it. It's just a great little tool. It's made for the dog grooming industry, but for me, it allows me to dry off this engine bay rather quickly. Again, I'm going to leave the video on. Bear with me, and I'll show you how I dry this off.